All right. In the last video or last couple of videos, we talked about different ways of, selecting things. We talked about the rectangle, circle select, which are good when you have rectangle or circular shapes. We talked about lassos, which give us a little bit more organic shapes. There's one thing all of those have in common is they're all based on the concept of hand movement. So in other words, it's based on how you draw something. So it's like, okay, am I drawing it over, if I have the circle select, am I drawing it over there? Am I drawing it over here? Am I using a lasso? How am I dragging it with my hand and all that sort of good stuff, right? The next couple tools we're going to talk about is not based as much on your hand movement, but instead based on color in the photograph or image. Okay. So here I have this red apple. Okay. Now I could use maybe like it's not a perfect circle or a rectangle, so I probably wouldn't want to use one of these. I could try using like a lasso, but it'd be kind of hard with just the lasso to get all the way around all those curves. Maybe the magnetic lasso tool might be a way to go. But we're gonna start with something called the magic wand tool. What the magic wand tool does is it selects pixels based on color. So the way you should kind of think about it is when you select a pixel with the magic wand, it's going to sample that color. And then what it's going to do is go out in all directions and try to find similar pixels of that same color and automatically select them. So the way I like to think of it is like, you ever seen like a really still pond or like pool of water, like a literal pool, and you like lob like a rock or something into it and it hits the water and the ripples kind of go out in all directions. That's how it kind of that's kind of how this works. So what I'm going to do is go back with my magic wand tool and I'm going to click kind of in the center here. And you're going to see that it automatically selected all of these pixels of red. Okay. Now you notice I didn't draw anything. I didn't draw like a shape there or anything like that. It was using the color information of my composition of my image to do this, right? Now, you might also let me undo this and do it again, and you'll notice like it's only really selecting some of these red pixels, right? Why isn't it selecting all of them? I thought you said, Mr. Hurwitz, that this is based on color, so why isn't it selecting like all of the, red pixels? And the answer to that is when you select a color, there's actually many variations of a color. If you've ever painted a room and you went to like Home Depot or, Benjamin Moore or anything like that, you should know that there's no such thing as like red or blue or whatever. There's like for every color there is, there's these thousands of variations, right? And so when we select red, it's not just red, there's different types of red. There are brighter red, like here. There's darker red, like here. And then there's kind of this medium tone red that's in the middle, okay? And that's how when the magic wand selects, what it actually is selecting is your color based on luminance. So previously, we just talked about how luminance is measured from 0 to 255, right? If my luminance, there's something in a magic wand tool called tolerance. And what it does is like, let's just for the sake of argument, say I select a medium red. It's not bright, it's not dark, it's kind of in the middle, right? It's 150 out of 250, or 255, I should say. So if your tolerance is set to like 32, what it's going to do is select 32 variations of luminance above and 32 variations of luminance below. Um, all of those colors would then be selected. So when I selected here, what it did is my tolerance currently for this program is defaulting to 16. I think so it's doing whatever color I had, it went 16 above and 16 below. But that's not really a very big range. All right, so I was mentioning how, sorry, I had to take a break there for a second. I was mentioning how the tolerance, how many like variations of luminance is above or below your selection. So right now, this is how much 16 was. How, when I talk about there being 16 above and 16 below the one that I select. Another way of doing this is like, all right, well, what if I come into here? I'm going to deselect by going to select, deselect, or Command or Control D. And let's set this to like 40. And I can't click exactly the same spot, but if I click here, oops, I don't know why that went away. There you go. See how this is a much bigger selection than the other one was? Because at a higher number, you're getting more variations, right? So, and if I undid that and I made this like, I don't know, 75, I'm now getting like a lot more of the, getting closer into the darker areas, the brighter areas, things like that. I can use Shift to make multiple selections, okay? Another way to kind of do this is I'm going to click and hold to grab the quick selection tool. Quick selection tool is a little bit like the magic wand in that it's based on color, but it also has a paintbrush element, which means you paint in the selection. So if I click here, it's sampling, or it should be sampling my color. Oops. All right, it's actually doing it so well that it's like immediately grabbing the edge here. So I'm gonna Okay. Well, it did it so well. You can see how it automatically went to the edges here because it was able to sample that color and then come back. Okay. And then I get literally the entire apple with that use of the selection. If you wanted to kind of minus, remove some of that, see how I'm using this minus here to kind of like subtract parts, or I could use it to add, which is what I'm doing here. And once again, this is being based on color, not being based on my hand movement. Okay. Finally, there is this object selection, or if I click and drag, it will sample it'll sample the color, then try to sort of auto create the selection, which it did. And then there you go. Okay. So you can see different ways of using color. That includes the magic wand, the quick selection, and the object tool. Okay. All right. One more thing I want to point out is I've taught you many different types of selection tools. We talked about the rectangle, ellipse select, the various lassos, the various kind of quick selection tools here. And you're not required to just use one tool. If you're trying to select something that's a little bit more complex, you can actually use multiple tools to make that one selection. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to try to go around this kind of awkward shape. So by itself, none of the tools I have would really be the best. Like, here it's like, okay, me selecting this with the rectangle makes sense, but what about here? Or if I tried to use one of the lasso, going around this might be hard. I could use the polygonal, but it's like, well, what about these curves here? There's so many colors that using the magic wand just wouldn't be very efficient. You could try using quick selection, but I think the results are going to be difficult and a little bit awkward. So what you can try to do is actually utilizing the add and subtract, use multiple tools to your advantage. So for instance, I'm going to use the rectangle tool here, just like we normally would if it was a rectangle. And then I'm going to go to add and I'm going to use, now for this next one, it's like maybe using the circle tool or the ellipse tool might be the best. So let's grab the ellipse tool and I'm going to use use the add tool here. And I messed up a little bit, maybe like here. So you can see how I'm kind of adding that. I did a Command Z edit or Control Z here. All right, there you go. Oops. See how it kind of adds that there. Now for this last part, maybe I want to, it's got some nice hard edges here. A good tool to make nice hard edges that's not a rectangle or a square might be the polygonal. And I might come in and kind of, go around the shape as such. Oops, was that set to? Okay. And then, this gives me a much more complex shape. So my point I'm trying to really get across here is that you can use multiple selection tools to make a selection. It doesn't just have to be, one tool. Okay. All right. I want you guys to try that out. That was exercise 6 and 7, please.